hear a bit about the other upcoming workshops. There are really 4 more workshops to come, but one of them is very brief, just a one-day workshop. And so we had asked a representative from each of the upcoming workshops to say a few words to whet your appetite even more, so to speak. So the next workshop is going from molecular foundations to a continuum description, and that's on March 18 to 22nd, and I think Misha also can say something about it.
Yes, I will try to be brief. Okay, so we are going to have this workshop, as Peter mentioned, during 1 week from 18th to 22nd March. And why 22nd? The thing is that there is another one-day workshop which has been incorporated into this workshop. And I will show, yeah, so this is one-day workshop which is jointly organized by the British Liquid Crystal Society and Royal Society of Chemistry together with the Newton Institute. And it is actually on a very close topic. You see, its title is on the molecular modeling and theory of liquid crystals, which nearly exactly matches the topic of our second workshop. And this happened by chance, because these 2 events were planned independently. And when we have realized that there are 2 similar things which are going to take place about at the same time, we actually agreed with the organizers of this one-day workshop for this workshop to be relocated to the Newton Institute. Because originally it was planned to be in Manchester. And it was planned to be on an adjacent week, which was very inconvenient for many participants. And now, so we decided just to squeeze ourselves a little bit. So this workshop will take place on March, yes, I think whether it is 22nd. Yes, it is 22nd, right. And our workshop stops early in the morning. So there are maybe 1 or 2 talks early in the morning on the 22nd, and then the rest of the day is devoted to this workshop. And so topic is close, because in our workshop it was going to be more mathematical. And so we will consider the transitions between different types of theories. This will be more about theoretical physics, about statistical mechanics. But, we will have 2 distinguished invited speakers. So we will be able to hear the talk of Mark Wilson from Durham, and also the talk of Claudio Zanoni, another talk. And yeah, so that's about this one-day workshop. And then if I return to our second workshop, then what was the idea? The idea was, it goes back actually to the interest of John in the transition between different levels of description in liquid crystals, which is of course important because most problems arise when the model is applied outside its limits of applicability. And the problem is that we do not know its limits of applicability. And no, at least, we do not know them from rigorous mathematical point of view, and I'm a physicist, so I'm allowed to say such things. And that's, of course, the most difficult task is to make a description through different length scales without losing the consistency of the mathematical model, and to see how one model transforms continuously into another model or something like this. And many of these issues have been raised, as you remember, in different talks already at this workshop. But we decided that this topic deserves a separate attention. So all these issues will be discussed, I hope, in more depth, or at least in more detail during that workshop. So there are many new people who will speak, and so we'll have second and third opinions about different problems. But there will be also people who already gave a talk during this seminar, and they will talk about a different topic. And then, of course, if we're talking about this transition about analytical and computational paths, then there are two ways how you can make such a transition. Either by some kind of analytical theory, starting from molecular statistical, then to Landau-Dejean, and then to continuum description. Or maybe you can do this directly by computer simulations, the molecular dynamics or Monte Carlo, and there you can jump from one level to another and derive, say, macroscopic parameters or some macroscopic properties or coefficients of, say, Landau theory. And so both approaches will be discussed here. So there will be, you can see here, there will be a rich list, a rich selection of talks about different aspects of computer simulations, both in the bulk and at the surface. And also a number of people will talk about different theories, including in particular molecular theories. And I would like also to just mention that there will be a talk of Bob Evans from Bristol. And this is important because he will present a talk about the dynamic density functional theory, which is the most sophisticated recent development in how the dynamics can be described on the statistical level, which is actually the next step compared to this Anzager approach, which we heard about here. And to a large extent, this approach has been developed by Bob Evans, and he's perhaps the expert in the density functional theory of classical liquids, not only liquid crystals. His most work is outside liquid crystals, but he's one of the people who applied density functional theory to the whole field. Okay, so I think that's enough. I mean, that I hope to attract a little of your attention to this workshop. So we will be happy if many of participants who are here will also come to this workshop. Thank you.
We have time for some questions.
Misha, can you clarify, is the BLCS having a further meeting in the following week? Or
Yes, yes.
What's happening with that?
And this is under discussion now, because we want to incorporate everything. But on the other hand, BLCS has deliberately organized this meeting in Cambridge for closer interaction with this workshop, because many people would like to participate in both events, like myself, for example. So I think we will find a way how we can interact, and in particular, for example, what we should discuss is a reduced fee for this program participants, which would enable them to participate in the BLCS meeting if they like, if they keep accommodation here. And in this way, this should be cheap. Something like this.
Okay, there's no more questions, and John Ball will talk about the fourth workshop, nonlinear analysis of continuum theories, statics, and dynamics.
Pray.
Magic.
Okay, nonlinear analysis of continuum theory, statics, and dynamics is jointly organized with Hanghua Lin and Epifanio. So this is the most important thing. It's not in Cambridge. There's another university somewhere over there, 70 miles away. So here the sort of top left and bottom right are sort of classic pictures of Oxford, and bottom left is the new maths building, which is getting constructed, daily. You can see it in every sort of time-lapse photography, and it's a good way of finding out what the weather is like in Oxford, because there's always a picture of the building in real time. So it's anyway. This is unfortunately we won't be in the new building, but I'll be able to see it. Maybe we'll have a tour of the building. So it's sort of hosted by this Oxford Centre for Nonlinear PDE, which is I think, the largest group in PDE in the UK, though quite small, maybe by, for example, Parisian standards. And the topics are going to be mostly related to sort of rigorous continuum treatments, PDE, and related models. However, we don't want to be examining our navel all the time. So we welcome every kind of participant, and we've included in some speakers specifically because they will talk about interesting problems which should be discussed. For example, active pneumatics. So in active pneumatics, Tani Liverpool and Christina Marchetti will speak, for example. So that's the list, the current list of speakers. We may add to it a bit, but the total talk density will be a conserved quantity. So if we add speakers, we'll probably reduce the length of the talks. Okay. So we have plenty of time for discussion. Is that okay?
Good. Questions?
Do you have any contributed talk options for that meeting? It gives one an excuse to get funded to go.
Yes. Well, I mean, we'll certainly consider any proposals for talks. So yes, of course. But what did we think about posters? I can't remember. Have what?
Not to have posters.
Not to have posters. Okay, we decided not to have posters.
Thank you, John. And then Mark will talk about the last workshop, defects and geometry, and active and solid liquid crystals. I guess it should be active liquid crystals and solid liquid crystals, not active solid.
Well, that's a moot point, actually, one we can return to. So this is the topic of this is the title of the fourth workshop. I'd like to display this more fully. Is this possible?
View.
View.
Yeah.
Where is that? Oh,
It's
yes.
an icon on the top bar.
You can press F5.
Full screen mode.
Yeah.
Full screen.
Okay, well, that's even less visible. Anyhow, so there's a synopsis of what this workshop is about. And this workshop will be basically dominated by geometry. And I'll show you a list of speakers in a moment, and how geometry impinges on defects and on colloidal liquid crystal phases and blue phases, where defects are obviously extremely important. And then another aspect of this will be solid liquid crystals, and my talk here, if you like, was representative of some of the issues that will be coming up, and there'll be speakers speaking to those, and in particular the connection between elastomechanics and the problems of quasi-convexification of mechanical elastic energies and so on, and connection with the field of Martensites. And then the problems of defects. Defects I showed you in solids as well as liquid crystals, and then the connection between defects and curved shells and questions of topology as well as curvature. And then, as we saw in the previous workshop, questions of active pneumatics. That is, pneumatics that actually propel themselves, where there's some internal source of energy, chemical perhaps, or in the cases that I showed you where it's light stimulated. Now, here are some of the speakers, most of whom on this list we've formally agreed to come, but we've talked to them. And under the various headings, you see the various headings which show the sort of breakup of the program, geometrical aspects at the top, and I'll invite Randy to say a few words about that in a moment. The question of defects, and defects as templates for assembly, blue phases, liquid crystalline solids, halfway down, defects on curved surfaces as well. So there's some very distinguished people coming to speak about these aspects. And then the question of active pneumatics and defects. Now, I want to say a bit more about this one, because there will be two programs going on at the Newton then, as there is now. But the second program is very close to ours, and they will be having a workshop at the same time. So the parallel program is the mathematical modeling and analysis of complex fluids and active media in evolving domains. So it's obviously quite close to us, and their workshop in parallel with ours will be on the dynamics of suspensions, gels, cells, and tissues. And we will have a joint session with them on active pneumatics, the precise length of which we may agree by discussion. One of the organisers is here in the audience, Uwe Thiel, who's sitting there. So there will be that aspect that the two meetings will come actually together in one session or two sessions on this theme, and there will be other themes going on during the week, which I think will be of interest to both programs. So that promises to be very exciting. The second thing that's going on is the Institute for Complex Adaptive Matter, which is a US-based organization and several universities, including Kent, throughout the US, and with outposts outside the US, having a summer camp in Cambridge for 2 or 3 weeks, I can't remember quite how long, and they will start on the Thursday with some tutorials on liquid crystals. Their camp is largely dedicated to liquid crystals, and they want to share Friday with us on optomechanics. And so we will conclude in the morning of the Friday with talks on active solid liquid crystals and mechanics and so on, some of the things that I sketched in my talk. And then they will have experimental lectures on the same theme in the afternoon after our program is formally completed. So we will have these two outside influences on our workshop, and I think that will add very considerably to what we are going to be able to cover. Now, Randy, did you want to come up and say a bit about the geometric flavour of this program? You certainly gave me some very lovely pictures.
Well, there. Just look at the beautiful pictures, right? I said this before. We get to study these things, right? We don't have to use complicated machines or. Are we being recorded? Are we being?
Only you, Randy.
Yeah.
Everybody else, no.
That's right. We do not need complicated machines or telescopes or rocket ships to see these things, and these are as beautiful and complicated as we want them to be, right? And here are pictures of things where you can actually then take these things, focal conic domains, which I mentioned a little bit, and Oleg mentioned a little bit, and you can actually use them to build things. So you can make optical materials by understanding them. So it's not just getting to look at things. I think Rolf Petchik says this. Where's Rolf Petchik? What do you say?
Not sure what I say in this.
You say that your research is at the same time applied and basic.
Perhaps, yes.
So that is not being misquoted.
I would agree with that statement, whether I said it or not.
It's on your webpage.
Okay, and here's another
More of
beautiful
those pictures. Yeah, I didn't know what you wanted, so I just sent those pictures. And here, this is my special fascination, which I hope we could talk about, and somebody could talk about. It's about actually more abstract uses of topology to study topological defects. And I said yesterday that the pneumatic in 2 dimensions is very special because it really does. You missed this. I talked about you. Yeah, that the pneumatic in 2 dimensions is very special because it's a situation where the program of treating point defects as charges works. But for all the real systems we study, pneumatics, smectics, 3D pneumatics, smectics, cholesterics, the topology is non-abelian. The fundamental groups act on themselves. The first fundamental group acts on itself, and it acts on the higher fundamental groups. This is an artist's rendition of that, believe it or not, and I'd be happy to explain it to anybody.
Well, come along to the final workshop and hear much more about that. So this will be the starting themes, and others will come and speak to this. But this sort of idea pervades the work on defects and templating and blue phase, certainly, and intrudes into mechanics here. And then this will actually talk about defects in the active media as well. Yes?
What are the dates of the workshop?
The date is 23rd, I think.
24 to 28.
4th to the 28th of June. So it's at the very tail end of this program. Are there any other questions? Good question. Okay.
Perhaps we should say something about closing dates, because there are quite strict closing dates, don't they? I mean, which shouldn't be taken too strictly, I think.
Yes.
So, for example, I see for the workshop.
Sorry, for the what workshop?
For the third workshop, which is at the beginning of April, there's a closing date of the 31st of January.
Yes.
But I mean, this should not deter people from applying later than this. But I mean, on the other hand, it's good. It's good if we have, advance notice of who's going to come.
I think the closing date for this one from memory is something like the end of February, which struck me also as being a little bit early, but we would encourage people to sign up. Good, thank you.
Well, I think this brings us to the end of this first workshop. David, come on up, please, and join me as.
Are we going to sing something or what?
I know. And I have to say that I'm genuinely sad that this week has come to an end. It has been really a great pleasure and a tremendous eye-opener. And I'm sure I'm not alone in being happy with the new areas that have been exposed to us. And David and I work closely together, even though he's a mathematician, I'm a physicist, and organizing this workshop. And so I'd like to thank all the speakers for the lot of work and the very beautiful material that they presented, and to all the participants for their enthusiastic participation. And I guess what remains for us, for me, and probably for you, is to decide which of these many new topics that we have encountered to pursue first.
Good.
Okay, yeah, well, we already have some requests for workshops and informal gatherings and mutual tutorials and things next week, so the interaction is taking off already.
Well, thank you both of you for organising this.
Well, thank you very much.